Good morning, good afternoon, whatever it is appropriate for you. I just have to say welcome to Quintopia and welcome to this review of this Minitrix NS Koploper model. Koploper? I think that's the correct way to say it. So I don't know any Dutch, so my apologies to my friends in Holland if I butcher it, but I'm just trying to work my way through. I do love this train though, so while I don't know much Dutch, I do love their trains. And that's what I'll be talking about today in this review of sorts, is this Minitrix NS, and I'll try this, but it won't work very good, Nederlandse Spoorwegen, which I always kind of chuckle whenever I look for something for the NS, because Norfolk Southern is always the result that comes up. Nederlandse Spoorwegen is a little bit more difficult to find in your Google searches, whereas Norfolk Southern, clearly a lot more popular. So a little bit of confusion there with our American railroading friends. But here it is, the Koploper, which literally means, if I understand Wikipedia correctly, head walker. Head walker? You probably are wondering, what kind of name is that for a train? Well, we will take a look and explain why they called it the head walker. Although that's what it literally means. Koploper literally means that. In reality, it's called the leader or leader. So this is the leader, and this is the Nederlandse Spoorwegen version. I actually got this off of Marketplaats NL, marketplaats.nl, kind of an eBay or classified advertising site in the Netherlands. I've been looking for this model for years. It's been out of production for quite a while, and I believe this model itself, which is the Minitrix version 12749, was produced in 2003, and so it's been out of production for quite a while, although they do have a new version out in an Olympic scheme, an Olympic livery that I don't have. It's a 4-car set instead of the 3-car set here. Now I have another version of that Koploper. This is an older version. This is in the old Minitrix branding prior to the acquisition by Märklin back in the late 1990s. And it has the old logo and the old graphics and obviously an older style of packaging. Now what's in here to me is really cool and really exciting, and I just love it. And that is the same 3-car Koploper set, but this one is in KLM blue. So it's in an advertising livery that was applied to the Koploper, and I just think it's really slick and cool. And I had seen some photos on this on the web, but it was very hard and rare to come by. Again, I was able to pick one up almost within a week of finding the other version on Marketplaats NL. As this model is almost identical to the other one except for the packaging and the livery, we'll put this one away. I was surprised, however, with this set, given how old it was, that it does come with an NEM 651 interface in it. So conversion of this one to DCC was extremely easy, and I was surprised because nowhere on the packaging is there any indication that it had an NEM 651 on it. And even when I believe I looked it up on the internet, it didn't. In fact, I'm going to ignore what I just said. I'm going to open this up, take out the power car, and we'll actually look at the NEM 651 plug in it, because I was so surprised to see it. So again, like the other version, it's really, I love the paint scheme. And I love it that it's an airline paint scheme. Now, I was going to explain this later, but I'll explain it now. The reason it's called Koploper, head walker, the reason for that almost ridiculous name to it, are these doors on the cabs of the train, on the EMU. This is a EMU, obviously. And that would allow people to walk through this coach to another coach connected here. Now, from what I understand, these were actually problematic, and sometime in the last few years, the Dutch railways have actually closed these off permanently, so you can no longer do that, no longer do the head walking that these are apparently famous or notorious for. So let's see how easy this one opens. I haven't opened this one up in a while, so I can't recall if it was difficult or not. I think it was for that. It's really simple. Simple pry, very little pressure, and there it is. A interface with the DCC plug on it. Very easy to install, slides right in. Although I should say it's easy to install. Minitrix NEM 651 plugs can be quite uncooperative. And in some of my locomotives, I've actually had to solder a decoder to the contacts rather than using the interface, because the interface, for whatever reason Minitrix designed it, is not as compatible with all the 6-pin plugs as it should be. So we'll put this one away and we'll take a little bit deeper look at the other model. So this is the, as I mentioned, this is my traditional NS livery Koploper. The KLM version, by the way, is item number 12865, but I believe this has been out of production for probably 15 years, so it's quite an older model. This one is relatively recent. As I said earlier, I think 2003 is when it was released. Open that up, and we talked about already, I mentioned already why, at least what I discovered about why it's called a Koploper and what that name means, these front end doors. And if you're aware of many Japanese EMUs, they have a similar function, and there's a very similar family resemblance between this train and a lot of trains in Japan. So it's cool to me just for that reason, and one of the reasons I wanted one of these for so long is they are slick looking. And I did have the chance to see these in operation when I was in Amsterdam several years ago. So fairly cool, neat to see, and a really original, unique looking model. As I showed you already, the way to open these up is it's fairly easy to open them up. It's really simple, very easy, no stress at all. Just a little bit of, well, let's see how we do there. All right, very simple, just kind of slides right off. And of course, as soon as I say it's very easy, that's when it doesn't do it the way it should. So if you hear a crack right now, you're going to know I'm going to be crying. What is it caught on? So I should have taken it off more squarely, because taking it off on an angle is not a good idea. And I probably should be using strips of styrene to do this. Well, it's stuck on something there. Let's pause this and I will open it up and then show you what it looks like. Okay, here we are, back in action again. There was no problem. It was just, you know, again, sometimes you have to take the shell off straight, and if you do it on an angle like I had, it gets caught on, you know, some little piece of plastic molding on the interior of the car. No damage done. As you can tell, it has a flywheel, which gives it improved operation. Although this is one of their older motor mechanisms, so it's not up to some of the standards that we might expect from motors in more modern locomotives. It does have, if you have powered catenary, it does have the capability to draw current from the pantograph, and it does have cast-in seats, which is quite a nice feature because at least it gives you something on the interior to look at. And as I mentioned before, a very easy conversion given the NEM651 interface slot right there. Pull out the plug, the dummy plug, and you're good to go. So let's set that aside. Take out the rest of the set, the intermediary coach, and then the other car with the other cab control car, which is a dummy. There's no motor in this one. And this set uses the same sort of coupling system that we saw in the that I showed in the ICE 3 review I did. This one's interesting because it comes with an alternative set. Take out this packaging here of much smaller, a smaller version of it. You see that's a little bit smaller than these longer ones. So if you have wider radius curves, you can use those. And I believe these are actually dummy couplers with the simulated Scharfenberg look, I believe, that would go on the front end right here. So you can have a simulated Scharfenberg coupler on the ends of your, I believe they're Scharfenberg couplers, on the ends of your EMU. So we'll just put that back in there. And there you are, your Minitrix. No, hold on. So the other great thing about this set is the bidirectional lighting. As you can probably not see in this video, if I can zoom in a little bit, See if we can get in there. It has traditional bulbs, no LEDs in this, even though it's only about 8 years old. LEDs were still not widely used. But it does have a white bulb and a red bulb, so you do get directional lighting with this, which is really a nice feature with an EMU like this, because unlike with a locomotive that has bidirectional lighting, white and red, with an EMU you always want the red light on in the back. It looks great when it does. Now, one thing I was quite pleased to discover is, despite the fact that this is relatively older casting and an older model altogether, the detail is on the exterior is really quite nice. I think they did a beautiful job. Printing is sharp. The tiny printing just looks good. The doorways are nicely inscribed there and detailed. Again, with the bidirectional lighting, it really looks good, and I think that it's a fine model. Particularly given my concern that it was an older one, and I would maybe get something more reminiscent of 80s or 70s Minitrix or N-scale rather than more contemporary standards. And this one lives up to those standards, so very pleased. And now the sound check for the Koploper. So the Koploper, the report card for the Koploper. How do we do? Well, let's take a look at the report card. In terms of appearance, I think it's very nicely done. The detail on the exterior looks great. Comes with closed coupling options as well as that Scharfenberg option. Excellent job, including both the KLM version and the traditional NS livery version. In terms of performance, not as thrilled there. It's an older motor, older mechanism. Even with the DCC, it still is loud and noisy. I'm going to give it a 3. Conversion, very easy. Insert a plug. Cost, these are impossible to find. So I think the cost is not even going to be a factor here because it's out of production. And if you're going to find one, you're either going to get a great deal or you're going to pay a ton. So let's take that out. X factor. I'm going to give it a score here, and I'm going to give it a 5 because it's an unusual prototype from the Netherlands. Probably not the most popular nor the most profitable tooling or mechanism that Trix can provide. So I think they need to be encouraged to continue to produce unusual and different prototypes from around Europe and the rest of the world. So I'm going to give them a 5 on that. So overall, we got a score of 18 divided by 4. Well, what is that? That's about 4.2. I forget. My math here is not so great. Let's say 4.5. That's the score. So 4.5 out of 5. Pretty good score. Pretty good model. Love it. Again, another unusual, unique prototype from Europe. Thank you to Holland for creating such a cool train set. And of course, thank you to Japan for also creating equally cool ones, which I don't currently have in my possession. So again, as usual, thank you for, excuse me, I'll learn how to speak here. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please feel free to add any comments, suggestions, links to anything that might be relevant or interesting. And of course, if you want more information about my trains and my hobby, please feel free to visit my blogspot at quintopia.blogspot.com. Thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.
Aan de Amsterdamse grachten heb ik heel mijn hart voor altijd verpand. Amsterdam vult mijn gedachten als de mooiste stad in ons land. Al die Amsterdamse mensen, al die lichtjes 's avonds laat op het plein. Niemand kan zich beter wensen dan een Amsterdammer te zijn. Ik geef je een roosje, mijn roosje. Ik geef je een roos elke dag. En ik hou van jou tot de wij zonder dauw en de echo niet lacht om een lach. Ik geef je een roosje, mijn roosje. Ik geef je een roos elke dag. En ik hou van jou tot de wij zonder dauw en de echo niet lacht om een lach.
Daar is de